Hi guys and welcome. Just so you know, I'll try and pop in at the beginning of the videos so you can see my face and know that I am with you as you're going through these lectures. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We are going to review some things that we've learned in previous grades. So we're just going to talk about some types of numbers, so whole numbers. Most of us are pretty good with those. So we're talking like 0, 1, 2, and 3, so on and so forth. Our counting numbers is sometimes what we call those. Okay, negative numbers just mean that we're going opposite of 0. So we're talking like -1, -2, -3. We use those a lot with temperature or when we're talking about debt. And fractions, everyone's favorite type of number. So those are just parts of a whole or a number written over a number, right? So maybe we're talking about 1/3, maybe we're talking about 5/6. These can also be negative, so I could have -1/3. Or maybe I'm going to have -10/93, right? Fractions can be a myriad of numbers, and fractions are what kind of fills in our numbers between our counting numbers. Same with decimals. So maybe I have 0.5, which we know is 1/2, or maybe we have 0.333 repeating. Decimals can also be negative numbers, so maybe -0.2536. Okay, so again, whole numbers are our counting numbers. Negative numbers are just the negative version of our whole numbers. So any whole number you can throw a negative number in front of. And also there's the negative fractions and decimals that we can have. And we found fractions, which are just numbers written over numbers, parts of a whole. And then we have decimals, which still are parts of a whole. We just write them with a decimal point. And decimals could also be like a whole number with a part of a decimal. So 1.35. Could also work. So let's just graph a couple of those, okay? So if we start with 0, we know 0 is typically in the middle. And if we put a couple counting numbers, we'd have 1 and -1. And we want those to be fairly even on both sides, 2 and -2, right? And just remember that we go in kind of backwards when we're counting negative numbers, because this would be 1 jump from 0, 2 jump from 0, whereas this is 1 jump from 0, 2 jumps from 0. So that's why it kind of has a mirror image there. We could also add some fractions in, like I could add 1/3. I'll do this in a different color. We could add 1/3 about right there. Okay, we could add 1/2 about right there as our decimal if we wanted to. We could also add -1/3. Okay. So just a refresher to kind of what kind of numbers we have in our life and how we can plot them on a number line. Okay. Next part is we want to compare decimals, like what number is bigger, and sometimes we forget how to do this. So remember, we want to line up the decimal with the same spotted number and then compare each number from left to right. So if we're looking at the number 1.945 and 1.954, I'm just going to rewrite the second one down here. So we're going to have 1.945. And then starting at the left, I'm going to look at the numbers. Well, this number is the same. Then I'm going to move to the next one. Well, 9 is the same. Whoops, I kind of wrote this incorrectly. I had a little a moment there. I apologize. So this should be 5 and then 4. We all make oopses, right? So again, we're going to start looking at 1, 1. 9, 9 is the same. And then we have a 4 and a 5. Well, we know that 5 is bigger, so therefore 1.954 is bigger. Okay, now some of us don't have to write the number top to bottom, and that's totally fine, but if that helps us, let's do that and make sure we stay a little organized, okay? Especially when you make oopses like me, which happen from time to time. We want to make sure we're covering all that, okay? So again, if we look at which one's bigger here, go ahead and pause the video and just think and circle which one you think is correct, okay? So I'm going to write my 3, 4.5, 6, 7, 2. Okay, and I actually wrote it correctly this time. And again, I'm going to compare left to right. So 3 is the same, 4 is the same, 5 is the same, 6 is the same. But 8 and 7 are not the same. So I just look at which number is bigger. Since 8 is bigger in that case, I know that 34.568 is the bigger number out of these two. Okay. Again, same idea here. And if I don't want to write it top to bottom, if I just want to kind of compare, I can be like, oh, they both have a 9, and then they both have an 8. And 2 and 3 are different. So then the 3 is bigger, So I can look at this one. Obviously, we'd want to look at the front number too, but since we knew 0 was the same, I kind of just skipped that out of habit. But we should always look at that one. Okay, so again, hopefully this is familiar. If it's not, then feel free to ask me about it and we can review it a little bit more together. But the next part is super important. Okay, we're going to talk about rounding numbers, and I have a lot of students who struggle with this, and that's okay. So that's why we want to practice it, okay? So we want to find the place value that you're rounding to. So if I say round to the nearest hundredth, we should know what the hundredths place is. We want to look at the digit to the right of that number, and if that digit is 5 or more, then the number in front is going to go up by 1. If the digit behind is 4 or below, then we're going to stay the same. We're never going to lower the value. Okay, and then we're going to drop all the numbers behind that. So these are kind of the steps listed in word form, which I know some of you really like. If that doesn't help you, we're going to go through a couple of examples here. Okay, so if I want to round to the nearest hundredth, so let's just kind of review what each place value is. So if I'm looking at a number here, like if we look at 1, 2, 3, 4.5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. There's kind of a mirror happening with the ones place and the decimal, okay? So this is what we call the ones place, right? And then a lot of times we can go forward. We know that this is the tens place, this is the hundreds place, hundreds, okay? This is the thousands place. And then it kind of mirrors. There's no once place. That's what some students struggle with. But this would be the tenths place. This would be the hundredths place, okay? And then thousandths place and 10,000ths place. There's a TH at the end of all of those, okay? But this mirror point right here, the 4 and the decimal, that you can see it kind of goes tens and tenths, hundreds and hundredths, okay? And then thousands and thousandths, okay? So if we need a little refresher on that, let me know and we can go back over that. Okay. So hundredth, I'm looking through here and I'm just going to make my marker just a little bit skinnier so you guys can see it on there a little bit better. So hundredth, so I know this is my ones place, tenths, hundredths, okay? So I'm looking at the 3. So I need to look at the number behind the 3 and that's going to tell me what to do, and that's a 5. So the 5 tells me to go up. So I'm going to have 1.24, okay? And then the 5 and the 7 are going to disappear because they already gave me the information I need, okay? So let's go ahead and look at 3.2432. Again, it wants me to round to the nearest hundredth. So this would be ones, tenths, hundredths. So then I'm going to look at the number behind. And the number behind the 4, which is 3, is 4 or below, so that tells me to stay. So I'm just going to drop the 32. So I'm going to have 3.24. Okay. So basically, if it's closer to the 24 versus 25, we'll keep it at 24. Okay, because our decimal point was 24 here. Okay. So go ahead and try this on your own. So round to the nearest thousandth. So remember, this would be ones, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we're going to look at the 9. Okay. So go ahead and try that one. There'll be a question on Edpuzzle and answer it. And just to go back and review, because this one's a little bit different, we're looking at the 9, and the number behind the 9 is the 7. Okay. So the 7 tells me to go up. But 9, the next number up is 10. So I'm not going to shove a 10 right here, right? But I am going to make the 9 a 0, and then the 1 carries up with the 3, so that becomes a 4. So we're going to have 351.640, and the 7 goes away. Now you can choose to write the 0 or you can choose not to. That's totally up to you. After the decimal point, we don't have to include those extra zeros if we don't want to. Okay. Go ahead and try and round this one now to the nearest thousandths. Okay, so remember that place value, and there'll be a question on Edpuzzle for you to answer on that. Okay. All right, let's try a couple more. So we're going to look at this exact same number and round it to the nearest tenth, to the nearest whole number, and to the nearest hundredth. Okay. I think you guys will be okay with the tenth, so go ahead and try that one on your own. Okay, and if we round that one to the nearest tenth, again, I'm going to rewrite my number here, 9,909.937. So to the nearest tenth, I would have my tenths place, and I look at the number behind. 3 tells me to stay. So if I round this, it's simply going to be 9,909.9. The nearest whole number. So the nearest whole number kind of throws people sometimes. So we have 9,909.937. I'm just rewriting my number here. Whole number is another word for ones place. Okay? So I'm going to look at the number behind it, and that's a 9. So it tells me to go up. Well, to go up for 9,909 would be 9,910, right? So 9,910. Okay. Now go ahead and try rounding to the nearest hundredth. And once you've completed that, you can stop watching the video, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.